I want to begin by thanking all of you for taking on the awesome responsibility of running in the first place and then choosing to serve. It is not something that any of you take lightly. It is something that all of us appreciate, and you are to be congratulated, not just for winning, but for the fact that you're willing to do this. Your family and your friends are here today. They congratulate you. They are excited for you, and I am excited for you. This is not something to take lightly, what you have taken on. And I can speak on behalf of all Missouri voters in telling you that we are counting on you to take a great state and to make it even better. Now, I'm going to be brief today because I recognize that most of you and your families, you didn't come here today to listen to me. And frankly, most of you are probably not going to like what it is that I have to say. But the people of Missouri did elect me to a 4-year term as your Secretary of State, as your chief election official, and I intend to use my final days in office to make a little bit of a point. Now, I want to start by apologizing to the members of the minority party in advance, because I'm mostly going to be talking to the folks in the majority party here. Voters across the country and in our state decided in November to turn things over a bit and to decide that my Republican friends would have the opportunity for 2 to most likely 4 years to shape this state and to shape this nation as they see fit. And so I am here today as a Missouri voter to ask you simply not to overstep when it comes to voting rights. Voters decided in November that they would vote for and pass into law, into our state constitution, a change to our laws to the effect of having a photo ID requirement, a voter photo ID requirement. It's fine, go ahead if you want to. I hope you will also applaud this, which is that I believe, and I think you believe, that in doing so, they did not have the intent of eventually disenfranchising any eligible voters in Missouri. I believe that though they decided to have a photo ID requirement, that they don't actually want to make it so that people who have been voting for a long time and are legal eligible voters, that those people aren't allowed to vote. Now, last year, you decided to pass over my objection and over the governor's veto a photo ID bill. And in doing so, you made a deal with Democratic legislators. And in that deal, Democratic legislators agreed to end their filibuster in exchange for you accepting some provisions into the law that would mitigate the damage, that would limit the number of people who might be disenfranchised by the law. Now, already, I have heard some members of this body make public statements saying that the law needs to be revisited, that the issue needs to be revisited, that the law doesn't go far enough. Today is the first day of the legislative session. That law has not yet taken effect. And yet already there are folks saying they want to go back on their word and they want to go further to possibly restrict the rights of Missouri voters. Already there are people who apparently have ideas about how they might further restrict those rights. And before you go down that path, I just hope that you will consider the results and the consequences that have happened in other states. What these mandates in other states have done, when they have taken these more extreme proposals and turned them into laws, is they have made it so that a specific form of identification is required that people in those states don't need for any other purpose, that they require people to go and to get that form of ID that they would need only for voting, because they don't use it in any other part of their lives. In America, we call that a poll tax. And just because of the time or the money or the impossibility of complying with that, and as a result, not having maybe a birth certificate that they would need to comply with it, doing that now is no less right than or no less wrong, rather, than it was a half century ago. After Wisconsin implemented a bill like that, turned it into a law, the voter turnout this past November was the lowest that they have had in 20 years. Election officials there say that it was the lowest in the highest poverty areas, and they attribute it to the fact that that's where people had the hardest problem affording the documents or getting the ability to actually be able to vote by getting that identification. And there were countless heartbreaking stories of people all over the state who were denied the opportunity to vote because of the new law. In North Carolina, an 86-year-old woman went to the DMV to get an ID that she didn't need, but she was going to need it if she was going to vote, so she set out to get it. She was turned away from the DMV because she couldn't prove her maiden name. I think about the thousands of people who didn't even get as far as she got, who didn't bother to attempt it because they knew all the obstacles that sat in front of them. We've actually already had this debate in America. American heroes face down batons and dogs and fire hoses to march across a bridge in Selma. Both here and on foreign shores, Americans of every color have given their lives for the simple idea that we all count and that all of us get to vote. Now, you may not think that that's important, and if you don't, you should at least know this, that in my 4 years as the Secretary of the State of Missouri, there's never been a reported case of voter impersonation fraud. And in my predecessor's 8 years, there was never a case. And in her predecessor's 4 years, there was never a case. I could keep going, but I will give you the short version. And the short version is this, that there has never been a case of voter impersonation fraud in the history of the state of Missouri. Ever. And that is the only form of voter fraud that a photo ID requirement can even pretend to prevent. And I know that there are people who say otherwise, that it could deal with other forms of fraud, but we know that that's not true. I know many of you personally. I know that you did not come here to try and restrict the rights of your constituents to vote. And the majority party in this chamber won a Senate seat, the governor's mansion, the lieutenant governor's office, secretary of state, treasurer, and attorney general, under the current system. Clearly, it ain't working out that bad for y'all. Yeah, you can applaud yourselves. I don't care. Go ahead. It's all right. This system's working out for you. So I would just say to you that even though you have the power to restrict the rights of your constituents, of the state of Missouri to vote, that I hope you'll be careful about it. Because you can go so far that your friends and family, that your neighbors, that your constituents in your districts could end up being denied the opportunity to vote. I am proud of the work that we've done in the last 4 years in my office as Secretary of State. I'm proud that we were able to move early voting ahead to a point where a Republican member of this body, the vice chair of the Elections Committee, filed it as a bill. I'm proud of the fact that in our office we worked to make it so that for the first time, Missourians can register to vote using an online form. I'm proud of the work we did with you, with the state legislature, to make it so that participants in the Safe at Home program can vote absentee. Every single one of those changes, they made it easier to vote, but none of them made elections less secure. So the fact is that you can pursue proposals like that. And I'm not here saying that there are no problems in elections. Clearly, they are not perfect and there are problems. That's why I created the first formal process in our state's history to review and investigate election offenses and voting issues. And I investigated, did more investigations than any Secretary of State in Missouri history, and I did all of it without disenfranchising a single eligible voter. You can protect the integrity of our elections without stopping anyone from voting. Now look, I'm going to let you get back now to today's opening ceremony because I know I'm not who you came to hear, and I know that none of this is what you wanted to hear. But I am your Secretary of State for a little bit longer, and as a result, I feel a responsibility to tell you that even though you have the power to take away the right to vote from the citizens of Missouri, that you shouldn't. And that if you choose to follow the example of Wisconsin or North Carolina, well then, I guess we'll see you in court.